Depending on where you're at with your photography, you either want to push it to the next limit or not, but this is definitely one of those things which is very popular, so here we go. So, what is HDR? It's multiple images that creates one. Effectively, you're going to take a number of images at different apertures or different speeds, depending on how your camera is set up. And normally this is done in a bracketing way. So using bracketing to get the images, always best of course to use raw, big files, and especially if you're doing a Nikon file set where you could easily be taking 9 images. If you've got one of the bigger Nikon cameras, you could be taking 9 images all in raw, trying to collapse that down into a single image so that you can imagine how much computing power that can take. Generally speaking though, you're looking at around 3 or 5 images to create your HDR. The middle image obviously being what you'd perfectly use if you were just taking a single image, and then you'll have 2 which is underexposed, probably a stop down from each one, and then going the other way, 1 stop up and 2 stops up. That way you'd have 5, but you know, it depends on how you go about doing your bracketing. So that's a completely different class. This one is purely about how to put together your HDR images to create something from it, as it were, or take your images to make an HDR. And obviously look for a scene that's very contrasty, so that's how you're going to see the best of it. The software to use, traditionally there's 3, Photoshop, Photomatix and Nix. Now Photoshop is just basic, is a basic HDR product. I'll take you through that. But what it basically does is puts the 3 images together and gives you some tone mapping, but it's not nowhere near as clean or as automatic, I suppose, as Photomatix or Nik is. The difference of the Photoshop product, I think, is that the idea is that if you're going to do it in Photoshop, you have a full understanding of Photoshop, so you'll do the HDR process first and then go on and do your levels and masking, all the other bits and pieces to lift it a little bit more. But the other 2 products are far better at doing this in an automatic fashion. Okay, with that, let's go over and have a look at the project in mind. Right, here we are in Bridge. I've got the 5 images that I'm going to use. So that image here is the one that's metered in the middle. As you can see, hold on, there we go. Sorry, that's my metered in the middle image. That's a two under. That one's 1 under, 1 plus, and 2 plus. So this is all set up in 1-stop differences. So here we go. So if I highlight all of those, so we're going to do this first of all in a Photoshop manner, and then we'll go Photomatix afterwards. So if I go Tools, Photoshop, merge to HDR Pro, which is inside of Photoshop CS6 as well as Photoshop CC. Tells me it's busy, but it's not. Here we go. Now this may take a little bit of time, as obviously it's got to bring all the images in. It normally just wanders through, creates itself a background image, and then adds all the others on top, as you can see on the right hand side in the layer palette. So there's the one that's merging to, and there's the images coming in on top of it. Now it's aligning all the images, and we should get something coming up which is its own HDR window very shortly. Here we go. Right, so here we have the HDR Pro window come up, which doesn't really look that wonderful. It has given us a lovely sky, which wasn't there initially. But what you can do is use the presets which you've got up here. Now there's a load of presets here, and depending on what the output you want was what you choose. But I normally go for Scott 5, which is this one. I think this is one of Scott Kelby's ones actually, and that gives us a good starting point. You can then play play with all of the sliders to get to where you want your particular one to go. Now from a strength point of view, I don't actually want it stronger than that. I'm quite happy with it as it is. And I may bring up the gamma a little bit later on. So exposure wise, oops, just lost the sky, hold on. Then come down to the tone and detail. So you're looking at midtones here when you're talking about gamma. So it's talking about the midtones of how it finishes. Exposure is obviously the lightness of it, which you can bring in, which is looking quite reasonable now. And a lot of this you can obviously, or a lot of finishing work you can do later on in Photoshop itself. So this is just the start of the whole thing. Shadowing. So maybe a bit too much. Bring it back. Happy with that about there. And then highlights, if you want to pull the highlights, so you've got to be careful of that because of course it will blow things out. So probably not so much. Saturation may be something that you like to have your colours really vivid. And that's brought the colours up a bit. So as far as that's concerned, it's quite happy, ready to roll. Press OK. And now it's going to go off and create a file, which is a 16-bit file. OK, as it gets to the end. And there you have it. An HDR version of those 5 images just coming in or finishing its stages. There we go. So a typical HDR image. And then from here you would then use the Photoshop tools to lighten or darken or do whatever you want to bring up the image to how you like it. Not a bad representation, but not quite exactly what I was looking for. I'll move over to Photomatics now. Using the Photomatics way of doing things, again you'd highlight your images and then simply draw down, for those of you who've got Photomatics, pull your, select all, sorry, pull your images down to your Photomatics icon or open it on your desktop, whichever way around you've got it, and Photomatics will pop in. There we go. So it asks me which one I want to do. Do I want to merge files to make a tone map? Of course I do, so I say OK. It picked up the 5 images I've dropped in, and I say, yep, I'm happy with that. Show 32-bit, no, just as it is, thank you. Okay, so the first box it comes up with, which is quite dramatic underneath, as you can see, but we'll get to that. The first box it comes up with is, do I want to align the images, of course. How do I want to do it? Was the camera handheld? It was. So therefore I'm going to tick that, so it helps with the making sure everything stays straight. Crop aligned images, no, I don't need that. Reduce noise, there shouldn't be much in it, but I'm going to put that in there. Reduce any aberrations on the edges, no, that should be fine as well, and it's as shot, so more or less is to keep everything as the defaults. I'm going to say align to that. So at this moment in time it's just doing the reducing of the noise. This is a long process normally. You know, it does take a little bit of time. Go away, make yourself a cup of tea and come back and you should be good to go. Okay, so this whole process can take a little bit of time, normally 2 or 3 minutes, depending on how powerful your computer is. But the end result should look something like this. So what it's actually done is it's gone and put all of them together for me. And it's given me some examples or some presets down the right hand side if I want to use those. But I thought I'd go through this a little bit with you. So from a strength point of view, these are things I would typically do. I do suggest that everybody should go and test these out to see if you like a particular shot, because every shot is different, of course. So color saturation, normally not too worried about it, because it normally picks up the color pretty saturated, as you can see. Tone compression, don't need to worry about those. Contrast, I do. So if you look at the contrast of the shot, again, if you you can choose which way you want to go with this one. I personally like to have a little bit of a darker contrast on this particular thing. I'll put it back a little bit. And you may have your lighting effects switched off. This is just again a preset, just allowing you to put some values in here which make sense to your image. So this is natural, natural plus, which I don't like. You've got a medium. It's okay. And then you've got surreal. Now a lot of, if you look on HDRs on the internet, a lot of internet HDRs are surreal. It's just coming in refreshing for that. And yeah, it looks a bit fake. So let's go natural. Oh, so you've got surreal plus as well, of course. Let's wait for that. Right, let me show you surreal plus. Here we go. As you can see, way out. Right, so go back. So this is the one I'm going to go with, which is just natural. There's some other ones which are hidden away, some more options you can use. So the white point option, it's not a bad one to have, lightens things up a bit. And the black point, as you'd expect it to, darkens things up a bit. It depends on where you want your look to be. I'm happy with it somewhere there, I think. Pull back a bit. And temperature wise, you know, obviously this end's going to be blue. Yep. And that end is much more warmer. So you choose where you want to go on this one. I'm going to go somewhere back in the middle again, probably more off to the blue side. Yeah, about there. And then the last lot, you've got some matte. This is just for smoothing out the edges if you do have any kind of problem edges. I don't, so I'm not going to touch it. Don't need to worry about that. And looking at it, happy with that, and I'm going to apply. Once again, this will go off, take its time a little bit to do the tone mapping. It's doing the tone mapping now, and then it'll do all the other bits and pieces I've just adjusted and give me a final shot. And there we go. Happy with that, like the look of that, that's no problem. It's very, very intense, I know. Bring up the highlights a bit. Not too much. And you don't need to darken anything. No, I'm happy with that, so I'm going to say done to that. And so as far as I'm concerned, as far as Photomatix is concerned, it's done its job. All I now need to do is pull that over. I can ask it to pull it into Photoshop if I wish. So save as. And when you do that, it asks you, yes, there. So I'm going to put it on my desktop as well as put it into Photoshop itself, which is where it's asking me about now. So there's one that was there before. So here we are in Photoshop. As you can see, as it was handheld, it's lined it up, and you can see there's some pieces here which are out. So first thing I would do to this shot is crop it, and I'd crop it into original ratios. So in other words, it's 2:3, and that's how I shot it. And just take out those pieces. There we go. And that would then be my HDR version of the Carrington up in Blue Mountains, up in Katoomba. I got a little bit of an edge going on there. I think I'll take that piece out as well. No, go this way. That way. There. Okay, happy. And that's how you finish off the image. In conclusion, these are my 3 examples as such. So the bottom left one is as it comes out of the camera, metered for the middle, and as you can see, it's got all the information in there, but yeah, sky is blown out, so it had to be darker, but that's what HDR does for you. The one on the right, bottom right, is the Photoshop version, which has done a nice job of the sky. Would need some work, like I said, you'd have to do some work to bring up all the bits and pieces you may want in it, but yes, it is an example. And then the one at the top is the Photomatix version, which I quite like. It's very, very vivid. You may not like your colors so bright, and of course you don't have to have it so bright. You can taper it down a bit later on, but the bottom line is that these are the 3 different ways of, or 2 different ways of doing it, along with its original image. Hope you liked the video. See you soon.